delve into the world of a seemingly perfect marriage that takes a dark and chilling turn. What starts out as a tale of love and devotion quickly transforms into a nightmare of murder, deceit, and a tangled web of lies. Welcome to Wine and Crime Time, where we drink heavily and judge humans behaving badly. Lori Kay Soares was born on December 31st, 1976. She was adopted by Thelma and Harold Soares and raised in sunny California. Harold was a Spanish and Portuguese teacher, and he and Thelma met when they both served as missionaries for their church. When Lori was 10, her parents got divorced and Thelma and Lori moved to Orem, Utah, leaving her dad and brother Paul back in California. Lori was described as intelligent, confident, outgoing, and popular as a child. She was admired by everyone, a great student, and generally just awesome. Mark Hacking was born on April 24th, 1978, to Janet and Doug Hacking in Orem, Utah. Mark was one of 7 kids in one of those giant families where everyone is super successful. Janet Hacking was a nurse, and his father, Doug Hacking, was a pediatrician. They were Mormons and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. All the kids were high achievers in various things, and the image of perfection was very important to their family. Mark was an adventurer. He was very charismatic, loved making people laugh, and just lived for attention. He was kind of an idiot, but people liked him, so they were just like, whatever. He and Lori met as teenagers on a camping trip. At the camp, Mark was being stupid old Mark, acting dumb, pretending to hurt himself, starving for attention. And on one of the camp nights, a lot of the people were gathered around a campfire. So Mark, sensing an opportunity, decides to put his hand in the fire to turn over one of the logs, and shocker, his hands got severely burned. Lori, being the kind and caring person that she was, ran over to Mark like, "Oh my God, are you okay? I can help. I know first aid." So she tends to his hand, and the two of them go on to become high school sweethearts. When Mark graduates high school, he goes on his first mission for the Mormon Church in Winnipeg, Canada. There are tons of rules that the missionaries have to follow when they go on a mission. There's no drinking, no smoking, no caffeine, no TV, no films, no music, no girls, nothing. You could only read religious books. So Mark starts out doing well on this mission, which isn't surprising because he's a pretty likable guy. But Mark soon found himself struggling to follow all the rules. He began sneaking out to local bars, partying, staying out late, and sleeping with young girls, claiming to be converting them to the Mormon faith. Unfortunately for Mark, this predatory behavior did not last for long because he got caught and was sent straight home. Now Mark's family is super embarrassed about him tarnishing their good family name. But Mark is like, "Guys, this is all just a big misunderstanding. Be cool." So they're like, "Okay, Mark." And Lori certainly had her suspicions that Mark had been cheating on her while he was away, but she chose to believe him and just let it go. So Lori and Mark are actually in a pretty good place after Mark comes back from his mission. They both go on to study at the University of Utah and then get married in 1999. Lori graduates with honors in business and then lands a great job at Wells Fargo. Mark, on the other hand, was training toward becoming a doctor. So he carries on his studies for a few more years to get into med school, then secures a part-time job at a local hospital and was super determined to make his dreams a reality. Things were looking pretty good for Lori and Mark, but beneath the veneer of perfection, there were cracks. In 2004, Mark is finally set to graduate. He tells Lori that he got a spot at a med school in North Carolina to study oncology, and Lori was just thrilled. So Mark and Lori are planning this big move to North Carolina when Lori finds out that she's pregnant. So now they've got a lot going on at once. They're supposed to be relocating, Lori's got to find a new job in North Carolina, and now she's got to think of the baby too. So on the 16th of July, Lori is organizing things for the big move, and she calls up the University of North Carolina to talk to them about financial aid, like how it's going to work now that she's pregnant, etc., etc. But when she makes this phone call, the university is like, "Girl, who? We do not know a Mark Hacking. In fact, Mark Hacking has never even applied to this school." And Lori's like, "Wait, what? I'm so confused. I'm literally moving there because my husband was accepted." And they're like, "No, not here." So now Lori's whole world is upside down. She also knows in the back of her mind that her husband is somewhat of a liar, but she doesn't quite understand the depths of this just yet. So Lori Hacking played no games, and she confronts Mark right away. She's like, "Make it make sense, Mark. What's going on?" And he straight up denies the whole thing and says, oh my God, it's just a mix-up. There must be some technical issue in the computer system. And Lori wants to believe him, but she's got a bad feeling about this. So at first she's like, okay, whatever, just fix it. But then a couple days later, on July 18th, 2004, she was like, no, buddy, tell me what's going on. And that's when Mark admitted everything was a lie. Mark had been living a double life for years. Every day he would literally pack his bag with books and everything and head to campus, and when Lori left for work, he would sneak his lazy self back into the house and play video games all day. Most evenings, when Lori returned home from work, he would sit and pretend to do his homework. There were times when he would meet Lori on campus for lunch. He would tell people about the stresses of school. He went to crazy lengths to keep up this performance. I mean, this man put so much energy into this lie. Who knows what would have happened if he would have just put all that into getting his degree? Anyway, Lori is pissed. Financially and otherwise, she'd been supporting him. She trusted him. She put her notice in at work at that point. She was pregnant, and now her whole world is totally rocked. So she and Mark get in this big fight, and she ends up writing him a letter saying, listen, I want to grow old with you, but I can't do it under these conditions. I can't imagine life with you if things don't change. I hate being home from work because it hurts to just even be in our apartment. She also went on to say that if he didn't change, she was going to file for divorce. She leaves the note out for him to read and then just goes to sleep. So Mark at some point reads the letter that evening, and somehow he's enraged at this. He's like, how dare she do this to me? How dare she want me to be honest with her and everyone else? He's like, I wear the pants around here, even if I am a trash husband. Not only that, but Mark was really, really worried that Lori was going to expose him to everyone. And this is where Mark was like, absolutely not. I cannot let this happen. On July 19th of 2004, at approximately 10:07 a.m., Mark calls the police to report Lori missing. Mark tells him that Lori went to Memory Grove Park that morning to go jogging, which she did quite often, but that she hadn't come back. Mark then calls Lori's mom to frantically tell her the news. So police head over to the park and soon find Lori's car in a nearby parking lot. And now everyone's starting to freak out a bit. The detective asks Mark if they could look around their house and see if they can see anything suspicious. And Mark is an idiot, so he's like, duh, yeah, of course, I've got nothing to hide. And almost immediately when the detectives enter the home, they can see that there was a bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense. First, they noticed that Lori's purse and wedding ring were on the side table, but also so are her keys. Like, how did she drive the car? They're like, okay, maybe this is a spare set. But when they'd found the car, they'd also noticed that the car seat was pushed back way too far for someone of Lori's height to have driven the car. So someone who drove the car last must have been really tall. Tall like Mark. Next, they find Lori's letter to Mark, and they're like, well, obviously here's a motive. So now the evidence is mounting. They realize the apartment was way too clean, as if maybe someone was trying to cover up a crime. Also, a new mattress had been laid on the bed with fresh sheets on it with deep creases in them, as if they were just taken out of their packaging. So then they search Mark's car and they find a receipt for a mattress from a nearby store, and the timestamp said 10:23 a.m., which is 16 minutes after Mark had reported his wife missing. Who goes shopping for a new mattress when their wife is missing? Police also found a hunting knife covered in fresh blood on the bedside table. Mark is like, oh, I've just been really into hunting lately. That's not even a big deal. So the cops are like, this dude definitely did something, but we only have circumstantial evidence, so we can't really do anything just yet. And now the media and the local community have caught wind of the story. And so now Mark is like, showtime. Mark starts just basking in this new attention he's getting. He's like really playing up the tears, and he's crying on TV about how devastated he is. Meanwhile, the evidence is still piling up. Traces of Lori's blood are found in the bedroom. After some testing, they matched that blood to the blood on the hunting knife and droplets of blood that had also been found in Mark's car. And finally, they find the original mattress in a dumpster nearby. In the mattress, they found there had been a big square cut out, as if maybe there had been a body that was lying there. So now Mark is like, the jig is up, they're definitely gonna catch me, but let me try this one last trick. He's like, let me fake insanity. So in the early hours of the next morning, police were called out to a disturbance outside of a motel. And this disturbance is Mark Hacking running outside, butt naked. So when the police arrive, Obviously, it's not normal for someone to be running around naked, but when they see it's Mark running around naked, they're like, oh my God, this guy is such a trip. And they quickly note that he still has his sandals on. And they're like, okay, well, if this guy was really crazy, he wouldn't have put shoes on if he was trying to be completely naked outside. What does this guy think? He's the first crazy person we've ever dealt with? They aren't buying it, but they have to send him to a psychiatric hospital anyway so they can gather more evidence against him. So the police continue with their investigation, and this is when they discover Mark's secret life. They find out everything about the web of lies and that he'd even lied about graduating from pre-med school 2 years prior to that. The news is going public and everyone, including Mark's family, is totally outraged. So 2 of Mark's brothers go to visit him in the psychiatric hospital and they're like, you gotta tell us what's going on. And Mark just breaks down. He gives them a full confession about school, all of his lies, and then tells them what happened to Lori. Mark tells them that on July 18th, after he read Lori's letter, he became so enraged that he picked up his rifle, walked into their bedroom where Lori was sleeping, pointed the gun at the back of Lori's head, and pulled the trigger. Mark's brothers hear this and they immediately report it back to the police, and Mark Hacking was finally arrested. Mark said during his confession that he had dumped Lori's body in a local dumpster that he knew was being collected that morning. So detectives are searching for her remains so they can give her family closure, and they finally find them on October 1st, 2 months after Mark confessed to her murder. Everyone is totally devastated. But what happens next is totally shocking. On April 15th of the following year, Mark makes a plea deal with the prosecution and was only sentenced to 6 years to life in prison, which was the maximum sentence in Utah at that time. 6 years for murder of your wife and your unborn child? After Mark's sentencing, the parole board straight away came out and said, don't worry, Mark is going to serve a minimum of 30 years. Like, he's not just going to serve 6 years and get out. He's also not going to be eligible for parole until 2035. So Mark remains in prison to this day. But still, 6 years? Like, who even came up with that law? This law was recently changed in Utah because of Mark Hacking's case, but even so, the maximum penalty in Utah is now 15 years to life. So the moral of this story is don't move to Utah. And also, fly high, Lori Hacking. We are so sorry your husband was such a garbage human, but your beautiful spirit will never be forgotten. Thanks for tuning in to Wine and Crime Time. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you can get drunk with us while we judge humans behaving badly. See you in the next video. Toodaloo!